Hello, everyone, and welcome to The Blueprint, a Chelsea FC tactics podcast. Soon and I are analysts on X, where we share tactical breakdowns of Chelsea matches and discuss other interesting talking points. In this podcast, we'll be doing the same, just diving even deeper into the details. So let's get started. Soon, how are you? How are you doing?
I'm good, my man. I'm good, Fahad. How you doing too? How's work? How's everything? How's Chelsea?
Uh, Apart from Chelsea, I've just been feeling a bit under the weather, as you know. So just an apologies to all the listeners in advance if I cough in between or if you find my voice a bit different. But yeah, otherwise, opposite to that, Chelsea have been doing well after Monday night's win. So that's what we're here to talk about. And yeah, so let's just dive right in. I'd like to start with the first half, and would like to know what your analysis and evaluation was about how the two teams, Chelsea and Wolves, set up, both from an in possession standpoint and from an out of possession perspective as well.
Okay. Firstly, I think the listeners will be okay with your coughs because I'm sure they are going to be tactical as well. So there's no problem with
Yeah.
that. So, as per Chelsea and the Wolves game, um, actually, it was quite interesting because I still saw a tweet you made or a post that you said that it's like Victor Pereira thought we were going to line up with a pivot, like a pivot in possession. We play the 3-2-5 a lot of the time under Maresca, and um, we also play a 3-1-3-1, or like we used to say in the fan base, we tacticals in quotes, the diamond midfield. So, um, but it looked like Victor Pereira had prepared for uh a midfield pivot because of the way he set up. But funny enough, when I looked at Wolves before the game, I noticed they still uh defend in this shape, this mid-block shape of five defenders, two midfielders, and three forwards, which is almost quite um not it's not like a normal thing. It's not very common because a lot of teams prefer more midfielders than attackers when you're in your mid-block shape, or when you're trying to press your position, or when you're hanging back to defend. Basically, if a team is trying to be aggressive, then okay, you could put your three forwards, then maybe have more in the midfield. But two in the midfield is very, will I say, too light for what any team would pose a threat to you, because it's a light midfield. You can
hmm
easily overlook. A lot of teams have three midfielders, four midfielders at times. So it was quite odd. So I saw the way he set up. It was only two midfielders, and our Diamond was kind of easily outnumbering their midfield too. So it was quite interesting the way he set up initially, and you couldn't. It's not a surprise the way we dominated that first 20 minutes, because we could just pass easily through that midfield, because once the front three of Wolves, Konya, Larson, and Sarabia tried to press, um, Tosin, our centre backs were very smart in the way they baited the press to come and easily find Caicedo, or straight switch to Noni and Neto to get out the press.
Yeah, yeah. I think you've made two interesting points that I'd like to add on. Firstly, with the midfield diamond, so with Chelsea setting up in a 3-1-6 and Wolves setting it up in a 5-2-3 most of the time. Yeah, we really ran through the midfield quite easily. It's something which this Twitter account called TactX, they're a brilliant account as well, sharing a lot of insights on Premier League tactics. They mentioned about how any system like this, where any out of possession system, that uses a double pivot in midfield just quite easily gets run through anyway. And yeah, I was a bit surprised. I mean, we've got the benefit of hindsight right now with the game having finished last night. We're recording it on a Tuesday night. That Victor Pereira could have used a midfield three when he started. Plus, Wolves did not press aggressively as well. They were mostly in a passive mid block. So yeah, it was a bit surprising. But I think the logic over there in putting three personnel in the front line was to have a better rest attack, which is a term that we're getting more used to hearing about and reading about. Yeah, so I think that was the major talking point in the first 20 minutes or so. And the second point you've mentioned that I found interesting was also that, yeah, Chelsea retained possession really well. During that phase, we always use the +1 or sometimes even +2, +3, depending on how many players got involved. So what I mean by that is, firstly, Robert Sanchez would get involved in deeper phases. That would be a +1. If Caicedo drops, I mean, he's standing as a lone pivot, so he's there all the time. So that's a +1 in general anyway. And then we also saw the players in the half space pockets like Cucurella and Dewsbury Hall, as well as Palmer, who joined in from the number 10, drop deep, help link play, and help keep possession. So yeah, I think we've touched on important points there. And this, well, helps us seamlessly transition to the next talking point, which was the alteration that Pereira made in the 20th minute. So at this point, he switched to a 5-3-2, and I think you can explain about why he would do this, and it has a lot of correlation to what we just talked about. Yeah.
Yeah, so like I think that happened when Jose Sa had an injury, right, where he called
Yeah.
his team to the bench to because Chelsea were just playing through. I think if that didn't even happen, probably the score would have been 2 or 3 before halftime. So that's also like a small talking point. The fact that small breaks in play where your coach can coach you in sense, change some things, can really affect the match. That's a whole topic on its own. So, well,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, it's quite an interesting one. So, well, actually, the way he changed it, I think Sarabia started to drop deeper a bit. He was very wary of Kukurea a lot of the time. I think he tried to press Kukurea when after the change. I think even Wolves in general became a bit more aggressive. You talked about how the mid block was a bit passive at first at the beginning of the game, but they noticed that Chelsea were getting to the wings very quickly, very easily. Noni was getting to the ball a lot, getting 1v1s against Ait Nouri, and also Ait Nouri and Semedo were switched too as well. If you noticed, um, the switch of taking Ait Nouri to the as a right back, which is very unconventional, taking a right back to left back to right back in mid game. But it kind of worked in a way because Semedo was more tight to Noni, and Noni wasn't having that space. The team in general didn't. They tried to not give him that space as much as he saw in the first 20 minutes of the game. So they tried to press a bit more, tried to be aggressive a bit more. But at times it did play to Chelsea's um advantage because if they are at the end of the day they have back five, they really back up the press a lot of the time because even if you want to be aggressive, you don't have the men to be aggressive because Chelsea are so good playing out of the back under Maresca that they know how to use man advantages so well. So if even though you're aggressive and you're just running around, even though you're aggressive and just running around, you will not be able to get you'll not be able to get the ball off Chelsea because Chelsea are playing out and they're playing out of man advantages very well. So if you have a 6v5, Chelsea will play out because you already have the man advantage. So Wolves couldn't easily do that as well. So but at the end of the day, I think the aggressiveness got to Chelsea in a way because we started being sloppy. Do you notice that so as well at the end of the
Mhm.
half?
Yeah,
Yeah, we started being sloppy on the ball, started losing the ball a lot. Noni at times too lost the ball. We even I think a lot of people lost the ball more than we realized. When I did a small comp of how many people lost the ball during that period, I saw Rhys James lose the ball. I saw Noni lose the ball. I saw Neto lose the ball. I saw Caicedo lose the ball. It was quite a lot of ball losses within that period because and that's what led to the corner, some little pressure that Wolves put at the end of the half before um Sanchez. I won't say did a Sanchez because well we'll come to Sanchez. So you go
yeah.
Sanchez did he did something well he made us concede at the end of the day. So yeah.
Yeah. A couple of things I want to touch on is starting with the opening 20 minutes again. I thought Chelsea had many opportunities where we played through their midfield, but I thought the last bit of beating the defensive line and getting a shot off or getting a creating a chance that lacked a bit. We could have capitalized on that period a little more, in my opinion. And second, to add on the alteration that Pereira made when he switched to a 5-3-2. Something I noticed, which was that it wasn't always a 5-3-2 still. Sometimes they did look to get back to the original shape of a 5-2-3, but I think that was just more emphasis for Doherty, who was playing as Wolves' right centre back, to press high and to press on Cucurella much tighter, which I think was a bit of a mixed performance by him, where sometimes he still let Cucurella have a lot of space, whilst the other times he was tight enough. So that was interesting because when I was actually watching the game earlier today, I noticed that during the break when Jose Sa was injured and needed a bit of medical assistance, I saw Pereira speak to Sarabia first. He spoke to Sarabia and then he spoke to some members of his defensive line. I don't remember who it was, but I'm pretty sure Doherty was involved in there as well. So you could see those specific instructions going. And as much as, we in a way criticized Pereira for making or for setting up Wolves in a 5-2-3, I think we need to give him some plaudits for making that change as soon as he could have, or as soon as he can. So props to him for making that alteration. The execution by the personnel is not entirely down to him, but again, that's another topic altogether. Um, but yeah, this helps us really just come to Chelsea's first goal before we discuss about Robert Sanchez. So leading to the first goal, actually, before we get to that, we've seen Chelsea last night on Monday night um, try many ways to try and break down Wolves, and one of the evident and prominent ways was to sorry, was to play over the high defensive line. So this is something we see a lot in the Premier League. I think it's a topic, it's a separate topic we could discuss altogether as well, to be honest, is why certain teams maybe choose to execute a high defensive line but don't put pressure on the ball. Because for me, and I've spoken to a few people about this online as well, very briefly, about how that leaves you just so exposed with a ball over the top, or maybe your center backs really have to be switched on. Like an example, just to divert a bit, was we saw that against in the match in Manchester United versus Brighton as well, where Brighton scored their first goal with the ball over the top. You could argue the United center backs could have done better, but anyway. Yeah, so in the 23rd minute, we saw Chelsea try to exploit this the same way. No pressure on the ball by Wolves, and I believe it was Caicedo who tried to find Neto in behind, but weirdly enough, he didn't really receive the ball. Doherty intercepted it, but there was a bit of miscommunication between Doherty and Jose Sa, and then it eventually gets cleared out for a corner, and that's the corner from which we score. So yeah, that's how Chelsea scored the first goal. Do you have anything to add on it, or do you want to just get right into Robert Sanchez?
Oh, yeah, I actually think also I think a correction. I think it was Chalobah that played that ball to Neto, wasn't it? I think it was. I think it was Chalobah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I remember. I think it was Chalobah.
Yeah, yeah, it was Chalobah. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. So. Yeah, well, I think the thing we can highlight from there for me is the fact that we scored a set piece goal in the sense,
Yeah.
yeah, in the sense of the word, because if you noticed, Chalobah, the ball was intended for Chalobah, the first ball from I don't know who took the corner, I've forgotten. Is it Palmer? I think it's Palmer.
Yeah, it was Palmer who crossed it in, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So I think it was intended for Chaluba. Chaluba missed it, and Reese got it at the edge of the box, and that immediately screamed Reese versus Ajax. That goal versus Ajax immediately came into my
Yeah.
head. Reese with space at the edge of the box to shoot. Like, yeah, so it was very interesting to see that one. But as soon as and Tosin, that strike also reminded me of Gary Cahill because Cahill when he gets into the box is a striker, is basically a striker in the opposition box. He's a striker, he's a number nine. End of story, because the way he can maneuver himself and take the shot, knows how to place the shot, and has a bit of pauser too. So Tosin really did so well there because he calmed down to the point that the keeper had went on the floor before he even took the shot. So I was pleased with the goal, to be honest. We don't
Yeah.
score a lot of goals.
Yeah. Yeah, it was nice to see Tosin get his first Premier League goal as well in Chelsea Blue. Hopefully, that's just the start of many. Because I remember tweeting during the game as well. It was nice that our defenders chipped in with a bit in with the goals on Monday night because our attackers really weren't clicking.
Mm.
I thought, especially our wingers, like you mentioned, Madueke, even Neto just didn't really have the impact that they should have. I mean, with Madueke, you can go a little easier because he got the goal. But otherwise, as
Yeah,
well, I thought our wingers were just a bit inconsistent, were just not as effective as we need them to be. This has been a broader issue over the season. I remember Johan, I'm pretty sure I've butchered his name probably, or Johan.
yeah.
However you pronounce it, wrote this brilliant thread, which I really liked, in that he discusses this topic in real detail, which I highly recommend because I thought it was just an excellently constructed thread where he just touches over everything. So I'd give that a high recommendation if you want to know more about this topic because I think everyone chipped in with their 2 cents on the topic as well. So so with that, I'd like to get to the last about 15-minute period in the first half where Chelsea did not control the tempo of the game. I'd like to hear your thoughts on this, but it's something I've discussed previously on my Twitter account as well, is that, in my opinion, again, this goes with the huge disclaimer or huge context that Chelsea are a very young squad, where, if I'm not wrong, the youngest squad in the Premier League. So that's something we've got to really consider. But nevertheless, Chelsea lack the, maybe, I don't know if it's ability or just a lack of execution on the part where we it feels like we don't know when to control the game. And when I mean control the game, it's not always from a possession standpoint. It's more from a tempo standpoint, where you can do that with the ball or without the ball. And most elite teams, quote unquote, elite teams do that with the ball. So in the last 15-minute period of the first half, and this um, overflowed into the second half as well for about 5, 10 minutes, maybe more, where we just didn't control the game. It was too back and forth. And although I would say both teams didn't really produce many chances from it, it was still a moment of chaos or a period of chaos. And I think this has been an issue for Chelsea in recent weeks because I felt like Chelsea in previous games before December did that well. And more often than not, I thought Chelsea did that well. Like I thought against Liverpool's a good example, against Aston Villa is another example that comes to my mind. So I'd like to hear your thoughts on that, and after that we can move into um, the goal that Wolves scored through the potential, or some
Through
would claim evident,
our
Robert
Bobby
Sanchez error.
Sanchez.
Yeah,
Well, so actually, that's quite interesting because at times I actually, even though Wolves applied a bit more pressure, like it wasn't like enough pressure to make any team wilt or to lose their composure or to it wasn't like that kind of pressure, that kind of intense pressure. So it almost feels like the mistakes were self-induced per se. So it's quite interesting because I've noticed, especially in this last 5 games, that we have not won, that we didn't win, that at times we just have just those moments of I'm just gonna make a mistake out of nowhere. Nothing is making me make this mistake, but
yeah,
myself. Lavia did the same against Bournemouth. Caicedo has had his fair share of them as well. A lot of our players seem to just in split seconds. I don't know whether some I might say have to do with fatigue, maybe. I wouldn't know because well, someone like Caicedo hasn't had a replacement in a while. He plays all the games,
hmm,
and so you just wonder if it's just some lapse in concentration. It's quite interesting to me because I want to know how. So, and it's happening a lot with the younger players as well. And it was good to see how Chalobah, Tosin, Reese brought some kind of experience to that back line. At least they're like
yeah,
the and Kukurea too. So they brought an experience to that back line because of those kind of things that happens from time to time with the younger players. So I don't know exactly what it is, but I've been noticing it with us. So I feel it could be the younger player. I want to also get your thoughts on it. Maybe it's the youthfulness of the squad, the it could also be fatigue as well, or every of them mixed together, because I'm not sure it's a particular reason. So because it just happens out of nowhere and we concede, um, you just know that in those periods that we're not controlling the game, it's like we don't control the tempo well. Either I noticed Caicedo tries to speed up the play a lot. Quite, I noticed something in the second half. Um, KDH, and I love KDH's experience too. That's underrated. I didn't even talk about the fact that he's experienced as well. Because in the second half, there was a play that uh, KDH was given the ball, and he could have turned and started attacking, continued to attack. Because, and I think that was when we were 3-1 up. You could have continued to, oh, let's go. Gun ho, continue to go. If in, and we the Chelsea squad likes that too, as a lot of those players, Palmer, Palmer is direct. So when he gets the ball, a lot of the time is I'm going to go for goal immediately. I'm going to look for that pass. Caicedo too as well. I'm going to look for that pass. Enzo too. I'm going to look for that pass. So I think I saw a stats. Um, I've forgotten from who on X that talked about how Caicedo, the top 10 most progressive midfielders in Europe. I saw Caicedo, I saw Enzo, and I saw Palmer. A lot of people will be like, yeah, like that means they are good players. What bunch of progressive midfielders, very good players. But I was like, I think JJ also said the same thing. It was like, if all of them are this progressive, who's going to keep the ball in the midfield? Who's going to recycle the ball? Who's gonna um who's gonna just recycle the ball, not every time you attack? And you could easily see from that graphic there that that's one of our problems currently. We're too progressive, we're too direct, and those kind of things hurt us. And that time, when I'm going back to that KDH moment, so instead of KDH to turn and move the ball forward, Palmer was kind of expecting the ball. And Palmer, when Palmer didn't get the ball, he made this like stuttery action, like he was already expecting to receive the ball and run. So he just had to stop. So KDH played it back, and it was like, I think, I don't know whether I made the sign to Palmer, but it's like that was a cue for, I think Caicedo got the ball seconds later, and instead of Caicedo to play forward again, he also passed back. So in that period, that minute period and in that second half, we just started to recycle the ball, one, two triangles at the back. So I love that because we don't see that enough from this side. Like you said, we don't see that enough from the side. Control the ball, control the game on and off the ball. So it was so good to see. So that's what was the problem that the end of the first half.
Yeah, and yeah, I think you touched on many interesting points and many that I agree with. Yeah, I think that covers a good portion of it. But yeah, just connecting those mistakes with our goalkeeper's mistakes now, like you said, how Wolves did not force too much out from us, apart from those corners where they really pressured Sanchez, of course. Um, yeah, it's just I don't know, it's just too uh, undeniable at this moment where he's making a lot of mistakes. He's a player that I think has a lot of qualities, a lot of good qualities. Um, but he just hasn't found his consistency, and by the end of the season, I just don't see him being Chelsea's number one goalkeeper anymore. He's someone I've been backing to improve for a while, but I think now it's just one too many errors. Would like to know your thoughts on that before we just touch upon the last few couple goals and the last period where Chelsea controlled possession, because we don't want to keep this too long as well. So yeah, just would
Yeah.
like your thoughts on everything as well.
Yeah, I would also like to hear your thoughts too on that Sanchez goal because did you know the way firstly I think Sanchez has because a lot of people won't say this because it's if you don't like a player in this fan base, no matter what you say, it does not make sense to those that don't like the player. Have you noticed?
Yeah, yeah, he's someone who the fan base have not really like. I don't think there's been any point where he's won over most of the fan bases. He's always had these glimpses of excellence. Where I remember, like the Nottingham Forest game comes to mind immediately, where he was just brilliant on the day, like absolutely amazing on the day. He saved Chelsea from not losing. I believe it was a 2-all draw. So yeah, he's just one that's just frustrating where he has the qualities. It's just decision making and consistency just have let him down a lot. And I don't know. I feel like not just running out of time, but he's potentially ran out of time in Chelsea Blue. But yeah, I think it's honestly a topic that we could discuss in real detail in a separate podcast altogether, because I think there's
Yeah.
a lot we could get into. But just to conclude, I'd like to hear your thoughts on the last couple goals that Chelsea scored, um, as well as how we control. I think you touched on how we control the last portion of the game as well. But yeah, just your closing thoughts.
Yeah. So sorry to a bit jaggers back to Sanchez. I also noticed that like as much as because this particular to the game, Sanchez's cross claiming has really like if you talk about a lot of Sanchez's qualities and ones that translate to like being the best in the league, best in the world, you can actually say cross claiming is part of that category, right?
Yeah, yeah, for sure, for
Yeah.
sure.
So yeah, so it was quite interesting that there was a plan from Victor Pereira and co to stop Sanchez from claiming a lot of corners with the way they surrounded him, with the way they actually um tried to stop him from jumping easily to claim. And so um I think that was a smart plan from Victor Pereira because not many people look at that because you can look at the way that okay you could get a mistake from them if you because before then we hadn't conceded from any corners in this season set pieces in the Premier League So, and at the end of the day, it's not like we conceded from a shot, we conceded from our own keeper's mistake. So, but it was smart because at the end of the day, it made Sanchez to make a decision.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you've definitely touched on an important point there. And yeah, I think we've covered everything we've wanted to discuss. So with that, we'll wrap up our first episode. It's been a great episode. I thought we discussed a lot of interesting topics there. And yeah, Manchester City away next. Let's hope for the best. Let's hope we can secure all 3 points. But yeah, that's it from us for our first episode. Hope you guys enjoyed it, and we'll catch you next week.